Shalom to the elect of Israel, to the hopeful elect of Israel, you Hebrew Israelites, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, West Indian, and Haitians. Got to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, the Most High, the Heavenly Father. His name is Yahweh in the Hebrew, not Yahweh, not Jehovah, not God, not Elohim, not Ahaya. It's Yahweh. His only begotten son name is Yahweh Shai in the Hebrew, not Yahshua, not Yeshua, not Jesus Christos, not Serapis Christus, not Jesus Christ, not Yeshaya. It's Yahweh Shai. So we got to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rikah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well, who teach well, and a sincere salutation to all the occupants pushing this truth and believing this truth throughout the four winds of the earth, the entire world, waking up the hopeful elect. And shalom to the Akwaf who are listening and learning, the few sisters who are listening and learning. I'm Isaiah from the GMS Orlando camp, coming at you another lesson in truth, facts, faith, and edification, another daily edification, Lord's willing to be edified.
My name is Philippa Lensos. I work at King's as a senior research fellow, and I'm looking at how biological threats today are being shaped by developments in the life sciences. Biological threats are about the deliberate misuse of science for hostile purposes, and we're specifically talking about disease and infection. Some of the areas that we're particularly worried about are gene editing technologies, gain-of-function technologies, where you are deliberately creating potentially pandemic pathogens in the lab. Fortunately, there is a multinational treaty completely prohibiting biological weapons. The challenge for the treaty is essentially that there is no check to make sure countries are complying. This is of increasing concern because the number of countries that are developing biological defense programs which are permitted under the treaty is increasing. Alongside that, we've also got developments in science and technology that are decreasing the barriers to developing biological weapons. My work mainly focuses on the United Nations. An example of the sort of work I'm doing at the moment is to act as the coordinator of all the non-governmental organizations. It's incredibly important for states to reassure one another that the sorts of activities that they're involved in are not offensive. An example of my work looking at developing transparency between countries would be a peer review exercise that I was invited to take part in as an observer, where you had a country, Germany, inviting about 20 different states to come visit its biodefense facilities. We also have to work from the bottom up with scientists to make sure that the science that they're doing is being done responsibly and transparently. We do that through awareness raising and outreach and education, developing guidelines, risk assessments. The main aim of my work is really to make sure the Biological Weapons Convention remains strong and to make sure that scientists are aware of the security implications of their work and that they behave responsibly and ethically.
Which they are not doing, okay? Which they are not doing, man. The reason I played that is with the intro for this. I'm going to read this precept. Isaiah 42:9. Behold, the former things are come to pass, and new things do I declare. Who? Yahweh. Before they spring forth, I tell you of them. Who? Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai. Isaiah 46 and verse 9. Remember the former things of old, for I am power, and there is none else. I am power, and there is none like me. Declaring the end from the beginning, and from the ancient time the things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasures.
Is the novel coronavirus a biological weapon? I don't mean to peddle any conspiracy theories here, but I do think we need to take a look at what everybody is saying. And there are some Iranian officials claiming that it is a biological weapon. We've got some Russian officials claiming that it is as well, and they're pointing the finger at the United States. Israel, some Israeli officials are also saying, yeah, it might be a biological weapon. They're claiming it was China that unleashed it. China hasn't really said anything, and the United States is saying, no, that is a hoax. So let's go ahead and break this down a bit. The former Iranian president came out claiming that the novel coronavirus was a biological weapon man-made in a lab. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, sorry about that, this is his tweet. He says, it is clear to the world that the mutated coronavirus was produced in lab, manufactured by the warfare stockhouses of biological war belonging to world powers, and that it constitutes a threat on humanity more destructive than the other weapons that target humanity. So he also tweeted out a letter that he had sent to the Secretary General of the United Nations, and in it talks about how they believe that this was a biological man-made weapon that was unleashed in a lab, but he doesn't give any evidence of this.
And we know this, man. We already know this. Proverbs 15 and 22. Without counsel, proposals are disappointed, but in a multitude of counselors, they are established. Proverbs 20 and 18. Every purpose is established by counsel, and with good advice make war. And that's what they do. Bio warfare, man. They are killing us. Who is us? Negro, Latino, Native Americans, West Indian, and Haitians with chemtrails, GMO food, and bio warfare. Other ways, man. With diseases, pestilences, which is from who? The Most High Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai.
But we will see where there might be a little bit of, reason to be suspicious. Also, Javad Zarif, Iran's foreign minister, called the sanctions on Iran an act of medical terrorism. So he also at first made he insinuated that this could have been a biological weapon made in a lab, unleashed on the Iranian people. And then he's also come out saying that the sanctions on Iran that the United States has are an act of medical terrorism. Iran is not able to get all of the supplies that they need, and they're very much suffering because of the sanctions, and that is causing a lot of panic and a lot of death, and the virus is very strong in Iran. So this is what Javid Zarif says in his tweet. He says, real Donald Trump is maliciously tightening U.S. illegal sanctions with aim of draining Iran's resources needed in the fight against COVID-19 while our citizens are dying from it. The world can no longer be silent as U.S. economic terrorism is supplanted by its medical terrorism. So Iran has, the last count that I saw, which was I think yesterday, they've had about 429 deaths and over 10,000 people infected.
Now, this video is from March. Now, I'm looking at the news right now. It say countries with most cases. It say countries with more cases, right? Well, they just flipped it. It say states with most cases. New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, California, and Pennsylvania. New York got 265,000 cases. New Jersey got 96,000 cases. Massachusetts have 42,000 cases. California got 37,000. Pennsylvania got 35,000. Now they saying when they go back, I'll come back to it.
And they've now asked the International Monetary Fund for $5 billion in emergency funding. And they're saying that they haven't really placed blame on exactly who they think unleashed this virus on them, but they do feel like they had this unleashed on them, that this is not something that naturally would have occurred in Iran. And let's go ahead and take a look at a map to see what they're talking about, because it does look a little bit suspicious. When you look at the map, look at Iran here with 10,075 cases. Now, this was from yesterday, but look at the surrounding areas. Look at Afghanistan, 7 cases in Afghanistan. Look at over here in Iraq, 71 cases in Iraq. Look at the Arabian Peninsula. I mean, you've got 80, 74, 18, 45 in Saudi Arabia. You've got all of these small.
So countries with most cases: United States, Spain, Italy, France, and Germany. United States got 842,000 cases. Spain got 213,000 cases. Italy got 187,000 cases. France got 157,000 cases. And Germany got 150,000 cases. Now, they saying all the cases over the entire world is 2 million. And it's going to rise, man. Why? Because this is a biowarfare that was created, first and foremost, from on high, from the Heavenly Father Yahweh. Because he killeth and maketh alive. That's what you got to understand. This is the work of Yahweh, Bahashim Yahushua.
Numbers surrounding Iran, but you got 10,075 cases in Iran. And if you look at the countries in between Iran and China, look at here again. If you look at the map, you've got India with only 73. I mean, India is a densely populated country, and they only have 73, yet Iran has 10,075. Now, some people say, well, the reason why Iran got it was because China and Iran have a strong trade partnership. Well, China has a strong trade partnership with many countries around the world, and yet those countries are not seeing thousands and thousands of coronavirus cases, not like Iran. And Iran is having a really difficult time managing the virus. They've got a high death rate going on in Iran. So people are kind of raising an eyebrow and saying this looks a little bit suspicious. That, you know, look at over here when you take a look at all of the areas surrounding China. You know, China, of course, had over 80,000 cases. And you've got, look at these numbers, 49, 10, 39, 73, 1, 1, hardly any cases. And somehow the virus was able to jump from China all the way to Iran with 10,000 cases in Iran, and yet all the surrounding nations don't have nearly as many, including nations that have very strong trade agreements with China. The United States imports more from China than I think any other country, and yet we're not seeing 10,000 cases. I mean, not yet. We definitely could because the virus spreads, but for Iran to get it so quickly and so intensely, this is why people are raising an eyebrow to it, and it is suspect. Now look, when you think of Italy, which we're going to get to Italy on this because the Russian officials, they've pointed a finger saying that Italy is also a target of this type of terrorism, and we'll get to why that might be. But, you know, when you first look at the pandemic that's going on and you see China with 80,000, okay, that makes sense because that's ground zero, right? But, and Italy makes a lot of sense too. I was living in Italy last year, and I can tell you there are loads and loads, millions and millions of Chinese tourists in Italy. Italy is the #1 tourist destination in the world. There are millions of Chinese tourists in Italy. So it makes a lot of sense that Italy would be a very hard-hit country, considering it's like one giant amusement park in Italy. I mean, the tourism in Italy is massive. So that to me made sense. But then the question of Iran with 10,000 cases, that doesn't make as much sense. Iran is not a big tourist destination. You know, how many Chinese are showing up in Iran for tourism? That doesn't make as much sense. So it is a bit eyebrow raising. It's a bit eyebrow raising. Now, what do the Russians have to say? So some Russian officials blame the United States. They say this was a biological weapon unleashed by the United States. Igor Nikolin, he was an official who used to be on the Russian Biological Weapons Committee. He claimed that the coronavirus is an American biological weapon that is used to defeat its enemies, including China and Iran. He said, listen, animals in China have been sold and consumed and eaten for thousands of years, but the coronavirus has not been transmitted to humans all of those years, but in the last 20. So he's saying, you know, they've been eating these animals forever, and so why suddenly are all these viruses cropping out of China from eating animals? Now, I think a really logical explanation to that would be that we now pump animals with loads of hormones and all kinds of things in order to mass produce animals. So sure, there is, to me, it makes logical sense that we would see a lot more viruses and issues coming from animals because what we feed the animals is genetically modified, and we're genetically modifying the animals. So, you know, it's kind of bound to get back at you. But he's saying, you know, his theory is, listen, something else is going on. He says that this is the 4th most prevalent virus in China. He says, I think it's not a coincidence, but it is a design. He says, quote, because the Americans appear, now this, I had to translate these quotes from, they originally were in Russian and then they were in Persian, and I actually translated these from Persian. So they're not exact, but they're pretty close. He says, quote, because the Americans appear to be bound by a series of agreements, they have moved labs outside of the United States to prevent catastrophes in their country. He said of the reason for such labs around China. So he was saying that there's all of these labs that the United States has set up all around China in various regions, including in South Korea, in Taiwan, in Pakistan, all around the world. The United States has set up these medical labs. And he's saying that the United States doesn't want them on American soil, so we've been putting them in other countries. He says, we know that something happened, such as the outbreak of anthrax virus in the U.S. Army's Institute of Infectious Diseases in Washington, D.C. in 2008. The Americans also refused to sign the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and said we would not implement it because we have trade secrets and do not want to tell anyone what we're doing. Beyond that, thousands of Chinese tourists and businessmen come to Russia, but there are no viruses. So he's saying, look, no virus in Russia. We got thousands of Chinese tourists, thousands of Chinese business people coming here. But suddenly Iran has got all of these, has all these virus cases. Why not Russia? When he was asked, do you believe this virus was designed and programmed and was also transmitted directly from China to Iran and it's not a coincidence? He said, I believe this is not a coincidence, but rather a virus that goes selectively to countries that are considered enemies of the United States, namely China, Iran, and some EU countries, including Italy, as we've seen. So he's saying, connect the dots. This is suspect. Chinese businessmen, Chinese tourists go everywhere in the world, and yet really hard-hit countries are China, Iran, and Italy? This is what the Russian official is saying. Now, some Israeli officials also believe it very well could be a biological weapon that could have come from China. Orly Levy, she's a member of the Israeli Knesset. That's their parliament. That's their Congress. She says, quote, this is not a result of eating bat soup, but was a lab-engineered virus in some form or another, she said in an interview with Army Radio. Levy added that the state of Israel is used to combating biological weapons, and it is impossible that life should stop because of the coronavirus.
This is Ecclesiastes 36:6. Show new signs and make other strange wonders. Glorify thy hand and thy right arm, that they may set forth thy wondrous works, man. And that's what we see going on, man. These are the works of the Heavenly Father, man. And he got these people thrown off, man. They don't know what's going on. But you know what? It's the work of Yahweh Shema Shai, man. 1 Samuel 2:3. Talk no more so exceedingly proudly. Let not arrogancy come out of your mouth. For the Lord Yahweh is a power of knowledge, and by him actions are weighed, man. Okay? The actions are weighed by Yahweh by Shema Shai, man. Let's get this. Psalms 68:20. It reads, he that is our power is the power of salvation, and unto power the Lord Yahweh Bahashim Yahushua belongeth the issues from death, man. Okay? This is the work of the Lord, man. You see? But power shall wound the head of his enemies, and the hairy scalp of such an one as goeth on still in his trespasses, man. The Lord is putting in his work, man. Okay? Back in 1 Samuel 2:6. It reads, the Lord Yahweh killeth and maketh alive. He bringeth down to the grave and bringeth up, man. This is Yahweh Shema Shai putting in his work, man. Deuteronomy 32:39. See now that I, even I am he, and there is no power with me. I kill and I make alive. I wound and I heal. Neither is there any that can deliver out of my hand. And it goes on and on, man. Isaiah 45:7. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord Yahweh, do all these things, man. Okay? This is the Lord work, man. This is the Lord work, man. Them devils ain't getting no credit for this, man. Shall a trumpet, Amos 3:6, shall a trumpet be blown in the city, and the people not be afraid? Shall there be evil in a city, and the Lord Yahweh, Bahashim Yahushua have not done it. The Lord is doing it, man. This is from on high, man. There's no if, and buts about it. He's showing new signs in the earth, man. They don't know. Hey, the Lord. Proverbs 21:1 reads, "The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord Yahweh. As the rivers of water, he turneth it whithersoever he will. Every way of a man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord ponders the hearts, man." Okay? Proverbs 16:9. A man's heart deviseth his way, but the Lord Yahweh directeth his steps, man. You can't get around this, man. Proverbs 20:24. Man's goings are of the Lord Yahweh. How can a man then understand his own way? You can't, man. And what they're trying to do is reason among themselves some type of reasoning. Ain't no other reasoning. Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord Yahweh with all thine heart, and lean not unto thy own understanding, man. You see, in all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Nobody will understand this but the elect, man.
Retired Lieutenant Colonel Danny Shahom, who holds a doctorate in medical microbiology and who for over 20 years was a senior analyst for Israeli Defense Forces Intelligence for Biological and Chemical Warfare, said, so that guy seems pretty legit. He says, quote,
"See, he seemed legit, but he ain't. But he not." Salakia, Job 13:4, man. You see, they always call on these. He got his doctorate. Man, nobody care about that, man. Job 13:4. But ye are forgers of lies. Ye are all physicians. Ye are all physicians of no value, man. Let's see what he got to say.
quote, coronaviruses, particularly SARS, have been studied in the Wuhan Institute of Virology and are probably held therein, said Shahom. In principle, outward virus infiltration might take place as either a leakage or as an indoor unnoticed infection of a person that normally went out of the concerned facility. This could have been the case with the Wuhan Institute of Virology, but so far there isn't evidence or indication for such incident. So this guy, who's a reputable guy, says, we don't have any indication that this is what happened, but it very well could have happened. Now they're pointing the finger at China. So he's saying, look, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, they've been studying viruses. They're doing weird stuff with viruses in there. So the virus could have somehow leaked from the facility, or maybe somebody who works inside the facility accidentally got infected and they left the facility and then they went and infected a bunch of people in Wuhan. He's saying that's pretty possible. Could have happened. We don't have evidence of it, but it's possible.
They have no knowledge of Yahweh, man.
The question that the Russians brought up about
Yahushua.
Italy. So the question many of us have is, well, why would Italy be a target? I mean, it kind of makes more sense why China, if the United States did unleash this as a biological weapon in some way, it makes sense why China would be a target. We're in a trade war with China. We are trying to pressure them into bending in the way that we want. It would make sense that you would want to maybe unleash a virus that's going to be a bit, it's going to keep them busy for a while, and it potentially is going to harm their economy, kind of making them reach a point of desperation. That makes a bit of sense. Same thing with Iran, right? I mean, if you were a terrorist organization, or if you were a government that didn't like another government, and you wanted to somehow cripple them, I mean, we've seen that we've been doing economic sanctions on the countries we don't like. We continue to economically sanction them. The Iranian people have been rallying, so they've been having these economic sanctions against them from the United States, and the Iranian people understand that the reason why their economy is tanking is because the United States has been putting these debilitating sanctions on them, and they've been rallying over and over and continuing to point the finger at the United States. They're unwilling to topple their own government, which is why you put in economic sanctions. You do it so that you pressure the people to a point to where they hit a point of desperation and they topple their own government. They start blaming their own government. Well, it wasn't really working in Iran. It's also not working in Venezuela. But when the Iranian, so the idea would be to get them to a point of desperation. So if you were to unleash a virus in Iran that sort of began to put a lot of pressure on their medical system, and in turn a lot of pressure on the government, you might be able to then make the change you want to make, right? So that's the theory around that. But why Italy? That's the big question. Why Italy? If that was the case. Now, Italy, to me, it makes sense. Again, why Italy would end up with so much of the virus. There's a lot of Chinese tourists in Italy, more than anywhere else in the world. Maybe minus the United States. There's a lot of Chinese tourists in the United States. But okay, so let's entertain this. Why Italy? Well, because about a year ago, Italy signed up, unbeknownst to the European Union and unbeknownst to the United States. Everybody was blindsided last March in 2019 when Italy signed up to be a part of China's New Silk Road. Nobody knew that the Italians were going to do this. The U.S. government was blindsided by it. Mike Pompeo said he was blindsided. Everybody said, well, we didn't know what the Italians were doing. Sure, they were going to China a lot. These Italian officials were going to China, but they said the Italians, they're kind of sporadic. We don't really know what they're doing. And so we just didn't realize that they were signing up for the new China Silk Road, which was a slap in the face to the EU and a slap in the face to the United States.
1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 20. O Timothy, keep that which is committed to thy trust. Avoid profane and vain babblings and oppositions of science, falsely so called. O Timothy, keep that which is committed to thy trust. O Israel, O elect, O hopeful elect, keep that which is committed to thy trust. Avoid profane and vain babblings and what oppositions of science, falsely so called, which some professing have erred concerning the faith. They know nothing, man. But these are heathens. They know nothing, man. They trust in their science, man. We trust in Yahweh Shema Shai. That's why the Lord say, many are called, but few are chosen. Only the elect understand what is going on, man. And it's the judgment of Yahweh Shema Shai, man.
So this is coming from the New York Times. It says here, this was from March of 2019, Italy's deal with China signals a shift as U.S. influence recedes. This month, as the United States continued to engage in a trade standoff with China and leaders of the European Union banded together to demand an end to unfair Chinese business practices, Italy took another route, China's New Silk Road. In a move that signaled geopolitical shifts from west to east, Italy broke with its European and American allies during last week's visit by President Xi Jinping of China and became the first member of the group of 7 major economies to officially sign up to China's vast new One Belt, One Road global infrastructure project.
Wow.
In front of an audience of top diplomats, prelates, and government officials, all eager to learn more about China, Mr. Conte, which is the Italian prime minister, spoke admiringly of China's efforts to become a world leader in, quote, technology and innovation, leadership that we know is very contested by the United States. So the Italians knew what they were doing. They knew this would be a slap in the face of the United States, and they publicly stated it. It says the United States, in fact, sought to stop Italy's joining of the Silk Road. This week, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said he was saddened by the development. So they were blindsided by this, and then they tried to talk Italy out of this. Italy said, no way, we're signing up for the new Silk Road. This is going to be good for the Italian people. And they said, so we're going to go ahead and do this partnership with China.
I got to read this. This is Job. This is Job 30 in verse Job 30 in verse 8. They were children of fools, children of base men. They were violent in the earth. Hey, and when you read Genesis 3 and 14, when the Lord told the serpent that he was cursed above all cattle, right? And that on his belly shall he go, and he shall eat dust all the days of his life, man. Dust meaning what? Confusion, man. All these devils bring is confusion, man. This is Isaiah 24. Let's read this. Isaiah 24 and 5. The earth also is defiled under the inhabitants thereof, because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, broken the everlasting covenant. Therefore have the curse devoured the earth, and they that dwell therein are desolate. Therefore the inhabitants of the earth are burned, and few men left. Right? Straight to the point. Verse 10, Isaiah 24 and 10. The city of confusion is broken down. The city of confusion, man. The Lord say he shall eat dust all the days of his life. The city of confusion is broken down. Every house is shut up that no man may come in. In the city is left desolation, and the gate is smeared with destruction, man. It's nothing but confusion here, man. These devils had destroyed the earth, man. But this is from on high, man. This is from the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai, man. And it must continue. New signs is being showed. Prophecies are being fulfilled, man. And these devils is out of the way, man. Only thing that's left is what? Destruction, man. That's why the Lord is saying, Jeremiah 51 and 25, that he will destroy him who's destroying the earth, man. Which links with Revelation 11 and 18. They got to be moved out the way, man. Because these devils are destroying the entire earth with their madness, man. With their science falsely so-called, man.
Was a huge blow to the United States. And so there is, if you're going to go down this conspiracy theory road, which is what we're doing here, then you would see why there would be this desire to take a virus that seems to originate from China and try to cripple Italy. Because then that would make Italy say, maybe we don't want to have this Silk Road, this like direct link from China to Italy where they can import goods, services, and viruses. That would be something to make Italy think, right? So when you go down that road and you see that there's reasons for our country to not like Iran and to want to debilitate the Iranian economy, and when you then connect the dots of saying, we didn't like the fact that Italy signed up for China's new Silk Road, and so maybe we'll make Italy think twice about this by unleashing a virus on them that would make them maybe rethink it. It kind of makes you think, maybe there's something to this conspiracy theory. So the other big question to ask then is, has the U.S. ever used biological weapons before? Is this something that is in the United States arsenal? And the answer is, look, the U.S. had an official biological warfare program that officially began in 1943, and it officially did end in 1969. However, we do know that the United States has been using biological weapons well before 1943. We know
Right.
the colonizers were using biological weapons when they unleashed smallpox on the natives.
Right.
And there's reason to believe that the United States never really fully stopped using and developing biological weapons. During the official program of those 27 years, the U.S. developed 6 mass-produced, battle-ready biological weapons in the form of agents that caused anthrax, rabbit fever, brucellosis, Q fever, Venezuelan equine encephalitis virus, botulism. Also, a type of food poisoning was produced as an incapacitating agent. In addition to the agents that were ready to be used, the U.S. program conducted research into the weaponization of more than 20 other agents, including smallpox, plague.
You see, who been doing this, man? This is the work of the wicked, man. Only a devil would do something like that, man. Only the wicked, man. But the Lord, we understand. The hopefully the elect understand, man, that this is the work of the wicked. Their lot was to be what? Vessels of wrath, man. Fitted for destruction, man. Okay? The Lord created them to be the wicked, man. That's their lot. They are the border of wickedness, man. The Heavenly Father Yahweh gave them the spirit to be the wicked, man. She's naming everything that the devil does, man. All these things come from the wicked, man.
Yellow fever, typhus, bird flu, and the toxin ricin. Besides the numerous pathogens that afflict human beings, the U.S. had developed an arsenal of anti-agricultural biological agents. These included rice stem rust spores and the causative agent of rice blasts. And a U.S. facility at Fort Terry focused primarily on anti-animal biological agents. The first agent that was a candidate for development was foot and mouth disease. So besides foot and mouth disease, 5 other top secret biological weapons projects were commissioned on Plum Island. The other 4 programs researched included RBF, rinderpest, African swine fever, plus 11 miscellaneous exotic animal diseases. The 11 miscellaneous pathogens were blue tongue virus, bovine influenza, bovine virus diarrhea, fowl plague, goat pneumonitis, mycobacteria, N virus, Newcastle disease, sheep pox, Tesher's disease, and vesicular stomatitis. So I think the answer to has the U.S. ever used biological weapons before is a resounding yes.
Yeah.
The United States has unleashed these types of warfare in the past in order to get whatever we want in wartime or maybe outside of wartime.
Hey, straight to the point, man. You see that? Straight to the point, man. This is let me read this. Psalms 35. Hey, these devils frame mischief by law, man. Okay? This is Psalms 35. Hey, she just gave you the straight skinny, man. No chaser. Psalms 35 and 1. Is it 1? Let me see. That's cold, man. That was straight cold, man. Psalm 35 and 1. Plead my cause, O Yahweh, with them that strive with me. Fight against them that fight against me. Take hold of shield and buckler and stand up for my help. Draw out also the spear, and stop the way against them that persecute me. Say unto my soul, I am thy salvation. Let them be confounded and put to shame that seek after my soul. Let them be turned back and brought to confusion that devise my hurt. You see, let them be as chaff before the wind, and let the angel of the Lord Yahweh chase them. Let their way be darkened and slippery, and let the angel of the Lord Yahweh persecute them. These devils is at our neck, man. And if we don't have the covering of Yahweh Shema Shah, man, we ain't gonna make it. You see? We ain't gonna make it, man. These devils is putting in work overtime to get rid of you jakes, man. Let me finish this.
So, now, the problem with biological weapons is you can't control them, right? They're harder to control, and you're going to end up with collateral damage. But is the United States okay with collateral damage? Well, yeah, we've seen that the U.S. is okay with collateral damage. When we bomb nations, when, we take out buses of kids and villages with children and women, and, collateral damage is just part of the game. And if we're going to say, if we're going to go down this road, and if this virus was unleashed on China as a biological weapon, and then on Iran and on Italy, then perhaps those that decided to unleash it felt maybe a little morally better about it because they realized it doesn't affect kids. Healthy adults don't really get affected. It's just more of it definitely affects older people who are high-risk individuals, and it's definitely debilitating to an economy. Look what it's done to those nations. Now look what it's also starting to do in the United States. It's also created a lot of panic, but look at what our government was doing, right? Our government was sitting there saying this is no big deal. So did they maybe know? Did they understand what they were doing? And they thought, no, we got it controlled and contained. It's only in those countries that we didn't like, the countries we decided to unleash it on, and we're going to be fine over here. And
Right.
maybe that's why our government's response was so flippant about the virus. But you know what? Then you have to take into consideration travel patterns and a whole host of other things. And so in order to maybe also not have the blame put on the United States, once Russian officials and Iranian officials were starting to say, hey, something's a bit suspect, and once the Israeli officials came out saying, yeah, we think this might be a biological weapon, then you gotta shield yourself from blame, and you gotta say, okay, now we're gonna start shutting down things like big events and NBA and all of these things. So I just wanted to put this out there because it is being talked about in the news, in obviously not in our mainstream outlets, but what the Iranian officials are claiming of this being a biological weapon that's been unleashed on them. what the Russian officials are saying. This is being reported around the world. It's just not being reported as much here in the United States. So I wanted to bring your attention to it. It is interesting. It's interesting to think about, and it's possible. So,
hey, it's facts, man. These devils create biowarfare, man. To do what? Get rid of you Negro, Latino, Native Americans, man. It's facts, man. Okay? But you know what, though? This is Psalms 33. Let's read this. Psalms 33 and verse 10. It reads, the Lord Yahweh bringeth the counsel of the heathen to naught. He maketh the devices of the people of none effect. The counsel of the Lord Yahweh standeth forever, the thoughts of his heart to all generations. Blessed is the nation whose power is the Lord Yahweh, and the people whom he hath chosen for his own inheritance, man. But the point is what? The Lord Yahweh bringeth the counsel of the heathen to naught, man. Like I say in Job 5, man. But facts about this is it was created in a lab to do what? To kill you Negro, Latino, Native Americans, West Indian Haitians, man. Their whole duty is to try to get rid of the Hebrew Israelites, man. Okay? So they can do what? Try to get their birthright back. Lord willing is edifying. Gotta give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashim Yahushua, Bahashim Rekah Kodash, the bonus to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who well, who teach well, and a sincere salutation to all the occupants pushing this truth and believing this truth throughout the 4 winds of the earth, the entire world, waking up the hope for the elect. And shalom to the Awaf who are listening and learning. The few sisters who are listening and learning. The Lord willing to edify. Until next time I say shalom.